What if I told you that an ancient, almost magical manuscript held a secret blueprint, not just for turning lead into gold, but for creating art itself? It sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, right? Well, there's an incredible, real-life connection that links a 500-year-old book of secrets to one of the most famous rooms in art history. So let's dive right in. Take a look at this. It's a bizarre and, you have to admit, beautiful image from that very book, a peacock sealed inside a crowned flask. At first, it makes absolutely no sense, but it holds the key to the central question we're exploring today. What if the secret to making gold was also the secret to making art?
To even begin to answer that, we first need to get to know the mysterious masterpiece this image comes from. And trust me, it's a work of art that has captivated some of the most brilliant minds for centuries. The book is called the Splendor Solis, which literally translates to the splendor of the sun. The earliest version we know of dates all the way back to the 1530s, and it is a breathtaking work of art in its own right. It's filled with 22 intricate hand-painted illustrations that are just as strange as they are gorgeous.
So what is it exactly? Well, the Splendor Solis is considered one of the most important alchemical texts ever created. It's supposedly written by the legendary Salomon Trismosin, who was said to be the teacher of the even more famous physician and alchemist Paracelsus. So, it has quite the pedigree. And get this wasn't some dusty, forgotten text hidden away in a library. It was a book of secrets that was coveted by some of history's greatest minds. We're talking King Charles II of England, the poets W.B. Yeats and James Joyce, and even Johann Friedrich Böttcher, who was so obsessed with its secrets that while he was trying to make gold, he accidentally invented European porcelain. How's that for a side effect? Which really begs the question, what kind of secrets were they all so desperately searching for? To understand that, we need to decode the practice at the very heart of this book, a discipline known as the royal art.
Okay, so the Splendor Solis is a guide to alchemy, but you've got to forget the cartoonish image of wizards in pointy hats stirring cauldrons. Back in the 16th century, alchemy was considered a noble pursuit, a very serious philosophical and scientific discipline. They even called it the royal art. Now, here's what's really fascinating about alchemy. It had this dual purpose. On the one hand, you have the goal everyone knows, the physical goal of transmutation. That's the dream of turning base metals like lead into pure gold, using the legendary philosopher's stone. But running parallel to that was a much deeper spiritual goal, transformation. This was all about an inner journey, purifying the human soul to reach a state of enlightenment. And that spiritual dimension? That is the real key to unlocking these bizarre illustrations. You see, they're not just pretty pictures, they're actually a map for a profound internal process. So let's trace this alchemical journey they're showing us. You see, those 22 paintings aren't a literal step-by-step recipe for making gold. Nope, they're a symbolic map for the transformation of the soul. They show these allegorical scenes, like the symbolic death and rebirth of a king, to represent the incredibly difficult stages of inner change and purification.
And that brings us right back to our peacock in the flask. Now, in the symbolic language of alchemy, this image has a very specific name. It represents a stage known as the Calda Pavonis, which literally means the peacock's tail.
So what does that mean? Well, the peacock's tail was this brilliant, sudden flash of iridescent colors that would appear in the alchemist's flask during the experiment. It was this beautiful, promising sign that everything was working, that the alchemist was on the right path, right before the final goal, the creation of the stone, was achieved. It's a moment of incredible beauty and promise.
Okay, so a beautiful metaphor for a spiritual journey. Pretty cool. But here's where our story takes a completely unexpected turn. This ancient idea didn't just stay locked away in old alchemical labs. Let's see how it resurfaced centuries later, connecting to this idea of the artist as an alchemist.
I know, it sounds like a bit of a leap. What on earth could a 500-year-old symbol for a mystical, spiritual process have to do with a 19th century dining room in London?
And here it is, the connection. On the left, we have the alchemist's peacock in its flask from the Splendor Solis. And on the right, the world-famous peacock room, created by the artist James McNeill Whistler. That shared motif? It is absolutely not an accident. So fast forward to the 1870s, almost 350 years after the Splendor Solis was first created, the American artist James McNeill Whistler designs his masterpiece, the Peacock Room. It's a stunning, immersive work of art that completely surrounds you in this world of green, blue, and shimmering gold peacocks.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, maybe the guy just really liked peacocks. Fair enough. But here is the smoking gun. In his famous 10 o'clock lecture, Whistler himself described the artistic process using pure alchemical language. He said, through his brain as through the last alembic is distilled the refined essence. An alembic? That's a type of distiller, a core piece of equipment for any alchemist. The connection is right there, totally explicit. What this really shows us is that Whistler saw the artist as a modern-day alchemist, a kind of magus or magician. In his view, the artist doesn't just copy nature. No, they take the base materials of the world, things like pigments, wood, canvas, ideas, and through their creative vision, they transmute them into the pure gold of art.
This is such a powerful idea, and it reveals an enduring legacy. It's a timeless metaphor for the act of creation itself, one that stretches across centuries, connecting the ancient alchemist's lab directly to the modern artist's studio.
Let's just break down this great transformation one last time. In alchemy, the goal is to transform base metals into gold. In spirituality, it's all about transforming the soul toward enlightenment. And in art, it's about transforming simple materials and fleeting ideas into a timeless masterpiece. They're all different versions of the same fundamental creative process.
So when you get right down to it, the Splendor Solis is so much more than just some old guide to making gold. It provides us with this timeless metaphor for the act of creation itself, that magical moment of brilliance, that peacock's tail that signals something new and beautiful and valuable is about to be born from the most ordinary of materials. And that leaves us with one final question to think about. When you look at your own work, your own life, what are your base materials? What are your ideas, your skills, your passions? And what kind of gold are you trying to transform them into?